Hello everyone, my name is Triton Perrin and I'm here today to talk to you about Black Rooster Audio's new plugins, which are some EQs, the VEQ-5, which is based on the Pultec mid-range equalizer, and the VHL-3C, which is also based on a Pultec filter. And what's really cool is that Black Rooster Audio is sort of spoiling us because they keep coming out with new plugins so often, and they also are coming out with free plugins. And so this plugin here, the VHL-3C, is actually free for everyone, which is really cool. Something that I'm really liking about this company is that they have compressors and now an EQ, and they have an amp sim, and so they're sort of doing a little bit of everything. A couple of the plugins are free, and a couple of the plugins are stuff that you have to buy. So I'm really liking the direction that this company's going. Hopefully they continue to make free stuff. But let's talk about the plugins. Let's start with the free plugin. As I said, this is a high and low pass filter. VHL, vintage high-low filter. So when it comes to filter plugins, I actually personally use a dedicated filter plugin to do all my filtering because I do not like the way my stock EQ does it. And I know that some people do that as well, but not everyone does that. But what's really nice about just a filter plugin is that when you just need to do that, instead of opening an EQ plugin, it's great to just grab a filter, because sometimes that's all I actually do on a track, and sometimes you can use filter plugins for effect, like the telephone or like the lo-fi sort of filtered effect, which we're going to actually do to one of the vocal tracks on this. Now the VEQ-5, which is the Pultec mid-range EQ, it's a little bit different. Like most people know about the program equalizer, like the EQP1A or something along those lines. I've seen so many emulations that it's hard to remember the original name sometimes. But I actually never really got into using the program equalizer that is the more popular option, but I do actually use the mid-range equalizer quite a bit on many different tracks. Well, so let's just talk about what's on the mid-range equalizer. Of course, they're just on and off, of course, but there's one section which is just a peak. So the idea is that you're just boosting. There's no cutting or anything going on. It's just a boost. And you have from 200 hertz to 1000. Then there's the dip section, which is just a cut. There's no boosting or cutting, which is something that's sort of interesting about this. So you can just cut it with this from 200 hertz to 7 kilohertz. And then you have another peak, which is just boosting from 1.5 to 5 kilohertz. And then here we have what seems to be the output gain. And I believe if you push it all the way up, then you should be able to get some more saturation from it. So now that we've talked about the plugins, let's get on to using them, because that's the more important part, right? You want to hear what it sounds like. I'm just using a track that I've already used before, and it's just the Locomotive Audio mini song. And I really like using it because the tracks are completely raw. And it's very important this time because of the way that I prefer to use this EQ. So the way I prefer to use the VEQ-5 is actually as like a tracking EQ. So what I mean by that is that I'm shaping the tone of the signal, but not necessarily trying to fit it into the mix. I'm trying to get it prepared to be mixed. And I really love this EQ for that. So that if there's something missing from your original signal, this mid-range equalizer is great in bringing it back. So let's just listen to the effects turned off and just listen to the vocal by itself.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there, pushing, 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 hard as I can, we are still on fire.
So as you can hear, it's actually a really well recorded vocal. It was recorded with a Telefunken AR51, I believe, which is a very nice, expensive microphone, through the Locomotive Audio preamp, which is a really great preamp. But there's something that, for this song in particular, I want to be a little bit different about the vocal. And it's a little bit too bright and not full enough in the lower mid-range, and that is actually what this EQ excels at. So let's turn on the mid-range EQ, and as I said, I want to warm up the low end. So I'm just going to turn this all the way up and play around with this until we find whichever one sounds the best, and then turn this down.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there. Pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same.
So I just liked it at around 300, but as you can tell, it just makes the low end of the vocal just bigger. But it's also doing something that's not really that amazing, which is bringing up some of the muddiness that I don't want. So actually on the dip EQ here, I can go to just above where I'm boosting and just cut it out. And we can just start at the top and we can play around first and then cut what we don't need, because we don't want any of that ugly mid-range coming through.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there. Pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same. I'm forever dreaming.
So the cut there really helps in making it more of a smooth and natural boost, and just sort of making the low end bigger. So we can probably increase this by a little bit to make it a bit more pronounced. But then I also want to sweeten up the vocal a little bit, and I was boosting on a different EQ. I was boosting around 3 kilohertz. That's probably where I'm going to boost here. But let's just play around with the top band as well and see how that sounds.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there. Pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same.
So actually I ended up liking around 5 kilohertz here. But so you can kind of hear the very basics of this, of how this works. It's like you can make the low end just a bit bigger, a bit warmer, and you can sort of sweeten the top end a little bit. But it's not the EQ you're going to use for making it fit perfectly into the mix. I mean, it may be exactly what you need to do that, because you may only need to just work a little bit and make the vocal just a little bit better. And so this would be definitely the right choice for it. But that's why I say that this is more of a tracking EQ, and or like how I like to use it. So it's actually really cool. But the thing that I need to do now is actually grab the free EQ, or the free filter plugin that they have, and we need to filter out some of the low end, and I think mostly just the low end is what we're gonna have to work with, but we'll try filtering out the high end and see what it sounds like. Because going into compression, we don't want too much low end pushing the compressor. So if we just turn this on, I'll just play with both the filters, and then you'll see what's going on here. I'm going to switch over to 600 ohms here. It just seems a bit more open and transparent sounding. Anyway, so let's just turn on the filters and see what happens.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there. Pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same. I'm forever dreaming. Tomorrow we'll find.
So when I'm filtering off the low end, and for the purpose that I am, just so there's not too much going into the compressor, I don't actually want to filter off something that's too audible. And so around 150, you sort of hear it, but it's such a gradual slope on the filter itself that it's not impacting things too much. And that's what I really like about this filter. But now that we filtered everything out, I just have like the stock Reaper compressor here with the modern vocal preset. And I just had to adjust the threshold and the output gain. But now we can listen to the full thing and we can go back and forth.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there, pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same, same.
So something that you might have noticed when I took out the mid-range EQ is that it really didn't sound that much different. So I'm going to turn down the volume here real quick. But it really didn't sound that much different. It just sounded bigger. And so I'm turning on the volume so that we can hear it in a little bit more volume matched way, hopefully.
Just so close to being there, on my way to get up there, pushing, 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 hard as I can. We are still on fire.
So what this EQ did, it just sweetened everything up nicely. And as I said, that's what I want when it comes to like my tracking EQ. But you can actually use it for lots of other things. Now it's known as a vocal EQ, but you can use it on snare or on bass or on anything as long as you like the way it sounds. But actually, we're going to go over here to the Adlib section, and I guess I can leave this on for now. Right here, what this vocal part is doing is that it's sort of repeating the last word that the main vocal line said, but it's supposed to be sort of in the background or sort of just an accent to what's going on. So what I did in my original mix of this was I used a lo-fi, there's a plugin, Joey Sturgis gain reduction, and I used the lo-fi switch, which just filtered everything out and it compressed at the same time. But I don't necessarily like the way it compresses. Let's just listen to this so you can understand what this section is doing.
Fire, fire, but something has changed. Oh, we're not the same.
See, so as I said, it's just repeating the line. And so I don't want it to be as in your face as the main vocal line. I want it to be sort of in the background, but have its own character so people notice it, but it doesn't distract. So what I did for this was I actually used the filtering EQ, the VHL. And the idea is you just start off all the way on, and then you just back it off until it sounds good. And so let me make sure I'm in the right spot here, and turn on this. There we go. So let's just listen to this, and I'll slowly back off this until it sounds the way I want it to.
Fire has changed, fire has changed, fire has changed, fire has changed.
So now we already sort of have that telephone or like that really filtered sound, and it's already being sort of pushed into the background by filtering like this. So the thing that's sort of missing here now is that we need a little bit of boost in the mid-range to accent a frequency. So we can actually just use the VEQ-5 again and just reset everything. On Windows, you can hold down Control and click everything, and it just resets. So what we want here, the reason I'm adding this after the filtering is because this is going to introduce a little bit of saturation to it, because there's just a little bit going on with this plugin. And so it'll bring back some of the frequencies, and this boost will also bring them back a little bit. So I don't want them all to be gone, but I want the filtering there to just give us the effect. So in this case, I don't want either of these. I just want this top one here. And let's just boost it all the way and see which frequency sounds the best.
Fire has changed, fire has changed. Fire has changed. Fire.
So that's more of a focused effect right there. Now it really sounds more like the telephone type of thing, or the lo-fi type of sound. And so next, just to finish it off, to make it sound exactly the way I want it to, I want to add some saturation. So I'm just going to use the plugin mix analoger, just tape saturation, simple plugin to use.
Fire has changed. Fire has changed. Fire has changed. Fire.
And now we just need a compressor, so we can just bring over this recomp and just see how it sounds.
Fire has changed. Fire has changed. Fire has changed.
So that's good enough. So now if we listen to that in the mix, I probably will have to adjust the volume. But if we go back to here, turn this off, and then I could just adjust the volume as it plays.
Hard as I can, we are still on fire. But something has changed. Oh, we're not the same. Hard as I can, we are still on fire. But something has changed. Oh, we're not the same.
So see, it's sort of in the background, but it's you can tell that it's happening, which is cool. And after you add a little bit of reverb and delay and such, it'll all blend together really nicely. So now we've used the VEQ-5 for its main purpose, which is vocals, and we've used the filtering plugin for a little bit of creativity and making like a telephone effect. Let's go and try it out on something else, like snare as an example. When looking at the VEQ-5, let's move it over. You can tell it goes down to about 200. That can sound good on like a bass guitar, but the other EQ, the EQP1A, is more suited towards bass and kick because the frequencies go down lower. So for snare, it would actually, this one would actually work if you just need to get that bottom end of that snare. Like you have a really thin sounding snare, you want to get the bottom end up, you can just bring it up with this. So let's reset everything and just see how it sounds on the snare. So you can sort of hear that it really brings out that thud or that thump in the low end of that snare. That makes it sound really good. So maybe it's not necessary for this snare, but it sounds quite good that I might actually end up leaving it or using it later on. Now you can cut out a little bit. So let's just play with the other parameters and see if we can mold this snare a little bit more. But that low end boost is just so beautiful on this EQ. So now it might be a little bit too mid-range heavy, but I just turned it up a little bit more just because I wanted to. But it actually sounds really good on snare. So it's definitely something I would use. If the idea behind this EQ for me, as I may have mentioned, as I've probably said a couple times already, is that if there's anything lacking in the original audio file, and it's just I'm sweetening up, or I'm adjusting the tone to be exactly the way I want it to be, and that's what this is really good for. And so, of course, after this, you'd want to filter everything out that you don't need, probably like up to 80 to 100. You know, you can even go down to like 12 for the high cut here. So what's one of the things that you can't really use it on? That would be the kick drum or a bass. And you can actually use it on bass because sometimes boosting at 200 does sound good. But what about kick drum? That's something that you can't really use this EQ for because it doesn't really go down low enough. But let's just see how it sounds. So we'll just move this over and play around with it. I guess we can reset it all again. And here we go. So actually pretty quickly, you can tell, like when I was boosting that low end at 200, that just did not sound good. But that's because the kick doesn't really want 200 hertz. It wants something more along the lines of 60. But when I brought in this dip at 500 hertz, it really actually brought out that low end nicely. And then pushing this up at 5 kilohertz started to sound pretty good. It just needs like one more band at like 7 or something, and then it would be just right for the kick drum. And so that's why, I mean, you can't really use this on kick, but like snare or bass sometimes with the 200 hertz does work, and guitars especially work, and vocals, of course, it's meant for vocals is sort of how it was advertised for a while, I believe. So the last thing we need to check though is the CPU usage. I'll delete this version here, and we can check the kick and snare in the performance meter on Reaper. So the kick is at 0.72%, and that's doing a lot more than what is on the snare, which is only 0.3, which is really good actually. If I press play, let's see if it's any different. Nope, it's actually staying in the same spot. Some plugins, they do use more CPU during playback. All right, so they're very CPU friendly. They sound really good. Very useful EQs in my opinion. And I would definitely get this EQ. So as I already mentioned, the VHL-3C is free. However, the VEQ-5 is not free, but you're going to be really happy with the price. For the introductory offer, which I'm not exactly sure how long it lasts, it's going to be $40, which is actually really nice. And I would definitely buy this for $40 if you like this sort of EQ sound. And you're actually hearing this EQ on my voiceover. Oh, and I mentioned that it was $40 for the introductory price, but I forgot to mention that it's about $80, I think, after the introductory price is over. So definitely get it during the introductory period. If you're seeing this video afterwards, that sucks a little bit, but $80, or it may even be less than that, is still a really good price for this plugin. And who knows, they may even have sales in the future. So anyway, I think that is about it. If you have any comments, questions, anything, just leave it all down below. So I hope you guys all have a good day. See ya.